An elite special forces team, on their way back from leave, suddenly encountered an attack from unidentified armed elements. With a significant disparity in equipment, the members could only take cover behind obstacles and struggle to resist. However, enemy bullets rained down, heading towards them with destructive power. In this isolated, unsupported, and tense situation, could the Special Forces team find a chance to escape the encirclement? And ultimately, what had pushed them into such a perilous situation? Time rewinds 72 hours earlier. A girl, for unknown reasons, looked listless, seemingly harboring a terrible secret in her heart. Her close friend, seeing her weighed down by worries, suggested going out for a walk to relax. But unexpectedly, as soon as they stepped onto the street, they ran into a group of aggressive thugs carrying weapons. Without a word, they intended to rush forward and kidnap them. Fortunately, this scene caught the eye of Captain Guerrero, who was on leave. As a soldier of the Mexican Armed Forces, he naturally couldn't turn a blind eye. Therefore, he immediately drew his gun, subdued their ringleader, and ordered the others to drop their weapons. But unexpectedly, the ringleader showed no fear at all, and even threatened Guerrero not to interfere in others' business, or else things wouldn't end well for him later. Local police quickly arrived at the scene. Seeing Guerrero holding a gun, they reflexively raised their weapons in a defensive posture, while demanding he put his gun down. Upon hearing this, Guerrero didn't comply immediately, but instead recounted in detail what had just happened. But surprisingly, the group of police officers showed hesitation. The police captain, seemingly apprehensive about something, not only didn't proceed to arrest the thugs, but instead, they became suspicious of Guerrero's identity. Only after he presented his identification to prove his identity did the police captain order the arrest of the thugs. However, his expression, for some reason, was extremely unpleasant. Guerrero initially thought everything was settled, but unexpectedly, at this moment, the girl who was almost kidnapped, still shaken, approached and told him an earth-shattering secret. It turned out, the leader of the kidnappers was named Tuco from Murciélagos, the largest local drug cartel. The reason they brazenly tried to kidnap the two in the middle of the street was because they had accidentally discovered the cartel's mass grave, just a few kilometers from here. Upon hearing this, Guerrero immediately furrowed his brow, fully understanding the severity of the situation. He immediately summoned his Special Forces team to the scene. Indeed, just as the two girls said, a mass grave was hidden there, containing the bodies of 10 soldiers. Furthermore, the wounds on their bodies indicated they had endured brutal torture before dying. This discovery enraged the entire military command. Colonel Toro firmly declared that this matter absolutely could not be ignored. The mastermind must be swiftly apprehended to console the victims and their families. Thus, this difficult arrest mission was assigned to Guerrero. He would lead an elite Special Forces team, infiltrating the crime syndicate's stronghold to capture the suspect. On the other side, the Murciélagos boss, Damaso, was also watching the news on TV. After learning the mass grave had been exposed, he showed no expression, turned off the TV, then casually and cheerfully prepared dessert for his daughter. Who could have imagined this cruel and inhuman drug lord actually had a happy and fulfilling family? However, just then, the villa door was suddenly knocked upon. Damaso's expression immediately darkened. The visitor was indeed Tuco, coming to apologize. Looking at his younger brother who only caused trouble and couldn't do things right, Damaso's mood was extremely foul. Because, not long before, he had spoken with his inside man in the government agency. The contact said this incident was too serious. Moreover, the Special Forces unit was handling the investigation, making it very difficult to exert influence from within. And he also learned from his inside man that Guerrero was one of those who had killed his father years ago. New hatred and old grudges surged together. The flames of anger in Damaso's heart completely ignited. Thus, using a tone that permitted no argument, he ordered Tuco to find an opportunity to deal with Guerrero and his teammates, while he himself would continue liaising with the inside man. Meanwhile, Guerrero had summoned his team members and begun operational deployment. However, their primary target was not the boss Damaso, but a burly, bald man named Lalo. The target was one of the key members of the Murciélagos organization and also the main suspect in the soldier massacre. Furthermore, Guerrero had received intelligence that Lalo owned a high-end seafood restaurant and was present there almost daily. They could capture the target first, then through negotiation, exchange information about Damaso, thereby increasing the assurance for the main capture operation. This operational plan received unanimous agreement from the team members. Thus, without further ado, everyone immediately took action. They fully armed themselves, carefully snuck into the restaurant, quickly subdued the other staff and customers, then stormed directly into the dining area where Lalo was present. At this moment, the target was still enjoying his fine food, momentarily unable to react. The Special Forces members, posing as customers, also immediately raised their guns from behind, aiming straight at Lalo and his associates. After a tense standoff, Lalo and the others could only surrender helplessly. However, just as they stepped out of the restaurant, an escaped criminal holding a gun carefully got out of a car, preparing to ambush the Special Forces members from behind. The very next second, he was shot in the head. It turned out the team sniper, Polo, had been hidden at a distance providing cover, helping his teammates neutralize the danger. Everyone smoothly boarded a boat back to the other shore, then quickly moved to a safe area. Here, police were already waiting to provide support. After confirming the surroundings were clear, Guerrero handed Lalo and his associates over to the local police. The capture operation was successfully completed. The team members were immediately overjoyed, eagerly anticipating their upcoming leave. Colonel Toro was also extremely pleased with this result. He first granted Guerrero's team a short 3-day leave, then said the plan for the next mission would have to wait until after Lalo's hearing concluded. He hoped the Special Forces team would continue to provide support in the future. On the other side, Damaso successfully met with his inside man. Unexpectedly, the contact turned out to be the Secretary of Security, Marcelo. Upon meeting, Damaso said nothing, simply offering a bag of cash. Marcelo, understanding, signaled his driver to take the money, then took a phone from his pocket, saying Guerrero's call history had been monitored for 24 hours. Damaso could eavesdrop on the target with this phone. Next, Marcelo continued, Guerrero and his team will be on leave tomorrow. If Damaso wants to completely eliminate the trouble, don't miss this good opportunity. Although the place seemed very discreet, their entire transaction process had actually been secretly recorded by Tuco, hiding nearby. This was also an escape route Damaso had prepared for himself. Meanwhile, the Special Forces members, having received their short 3-day leave, decided to leave the military base, return home for a brief reunion with their families, and then celebrate the birthday of Polo, the youngest team member. So, the group took a photo together, after which Guerrero drove everyone away from the base. The vehicle sped along the highway, the occupants chatting cheerfully, full of anticipation for the upcoming holiday life. But fate played a trick. As the vehicle entered a remote mountain road, they suddenly encountered an ambush. Everyone hastily got out to resist, but the enemy was clearly prepared, fully armed and equipped. Fortunately, the members coordinated well, jointly eliminating several enemies, then quickly picked up weapons and continued the counterattack. Soon, they were all taken down, but years of combat prevented them from letting down their guard because of this. So, with unspoken understanding, they began searching and gathering weapons. After they finished counting ammunition, Tuco arrived in force with his men. Armed men and vehicles charged forward, frantically firing at the Special Forces team. Everyone fired while retreating, falling back behind obstacles in the roadside woods. However, Tuco wouldn't let them off easily. Bullets rained down. The poorly equipped Special Forces team could only temporarily evade, hiding behind cover, daring not to expose themselves. Before long, Tuco lost patience and, leading his men, charged forward. Seeing this, Guerrero quickly seized this brief opening, signaling his members to counterattack. With everyone's coordinated teamwork and strong support from Sniper Polo, the Special Forces team quickly achieved a major victory. At this point, only Tuco remained on the ground, but he was severely wounded, lacking even the strength to stand, only able to desperately shoot out the tires. Guerrero realized the enemy was exhausted and wanted to move forward to check the situation. But, just as they stepped out from cover, they saw a grenade flying towards them at high speed. Fortunately, everyone dodged in time, so they weren't affected by the explosion. The dying Tuco struggled to take out his phone, using a weak voice to report to Damaso, while begging him to definitely avenge him, then fell silent. By the time Guerrero led his men forward to check, the enemy only ground his teeth and threatened them with a few words, then stopped breathing completely. Reluctantly, Guerrero could only take his phone, planning to look for clues later once they escaped this difficult situation. He also realized there was a traitor within the military ranks, someone who had revealed their movements to Damaso. Thinking of this, Guerrero urgently contacted Carla, a team member still at the base, asking her to relay a message to Colonel Toro. Since the Special Forces team's movements had been exposed, to ensure the members' safety, he had to request withdrawal from this capture operation, hoping Colonel Toro would approve. Afterwards, the team would proceed on foot to the Browsville checkpoint, estimated arrival in 6 hours, hoping for extraction support then. Carla, upon hearing this, immediately asked Guerrero for their current location, saying she could come to assist right now. But unexpectedly, Guerrero refused her offer, saying that, in this situation, the team had to move immediately because the enemy would surely arrive before reinforcements. Simultaneously, to evade Damaso's pursuit, Guerrero led his teammates straight into the dense forest, planning to use the cover of the trees to reach the checkpoint. At the same time, Damaso also led his men to the ambush site. Seeing the devastated scene and the corpse of his dead younger brother, immense grief and boundless rage momentarily overwhelmed him. He held Tuco's body, vowing he would definitely kill Guerrero to avenge his brother and the other fallen men. Then, Damaso looked towards Lucia, his most capable right hand. This fully armed woman had cold eyes. One look told you she was not someone easy to deal with. Damaso handed her a phone, displaying Guerrero's location. Lucia, seeing this, immediately understood, led an armed squad, turned, and left. On the other side, the Special Forces team was advancing along a forest stream. After walking for an unknown amount of time, Guerrero finally ordered a halt to rest in place. Just then, Guerrero, who was on watch, suddenly noticed something unusual. A 9-person armed squad was approaching them. Hearing this, everyone immediately became alert. Clearly, a fierce battle was unavoidable. Fortunately, their geographical position was quite advantageous. Sniper Polo struck first. Then, the other members, using the cover of the trees, quickly retreated to a safe position. After successfully rushing down the slope, Guerrero looked around, then suddenly devised a plan. So he divided the team into 3 groups. One group entered the cave ahead to lay an ambush. Polo continued to hold the advantageous position outside for cover, and he himself ran to the roadside to hide behind a fallen tree trunk. Under the surprise attack and encirclement by Guerrero and Polo, Lucia could only lead her subordinates into the cave to take shelter. Unexpectedly, this was precisely Guerrero's plan to lure the enemy into a trap. Hearing intense gunfire echoing from inside the cave, Guerrero and his teammate carefully emerged from behind cover. Polo was suddenly hit by a bullet from above. It turned out, there was still an enemy left who hadn't entered the cave. Guerrero reacted quickly, firing frantically towards that enemy, temporarily repelling him. The gunfire inside the cave also gradually subsided. A moment later, teammate Combo's voice came over the radio. Only then did Guerrero breathe a sigh of relief. Despite winning this battle decisively, they still didn't dare let down their guard. 2 team members were wounded during the fight. A surviving armed enemy was still hiding nearby, and worse, Lucia had also escaped during the recent cave battle. At this time, in the perilous forest, every step held potential danger. So, how would Guerrero lead his teammates to escape the pursuit and reach the rendezvous point arranged with Carla? On the other side, Lucia escaped death and successfully rendezvoused with Damaso. But, when they followed the tracker to the scene, they found Guerrero and his team gone without a trace, leaving only 5 corpses neatly arranged on the ground. On each corpse, a phone had been placed. It turned out, just moments before, Guerrero had finally figured it out. The reason Damaso could find them so quickly was surely because he had everyone's location information. He decided to order the members to discard their phones, both to mislead Damaso and to buy time for retreat. Next, everyone trekked through mountains and forests, overcoming fatigue and pain, continuing towards the target location. When they finally reached another mountainside, Guerrero, considering the members' injuries, once again ordered a halt to rest in place. Taking this opportunity, he quickly examined Tuco's phone, and indeed discovered something unusual: the video of the transaction between Damaso and Toro. This further solidified Guerrero's suspicion. They had indeed been betrayed by someone on the inside. Realizing the gravity of the situation, Guerrero dared not delay, quickly gathered his teammates, and continued on their way. They had to quickly reach the rendezvous point to expose Toro's crimes. After walking for an unknown duration, Guerrero suddenly raised his hand, signaling a stop. It turned out, below the hillside not far away, stood a red-roofed, white-walled building. Finally, they had reached the end of the road. Polo used his 8x magnification binoculars to observe, discovering it was actually a crime organization safe house. Furthermore, the number of armed personnel inside the building was not large. So, they immediately decided to raid it, to replenish necessary weapons and medical supplies for the team. Effortlessly, they dealt with the guards who came out upon hearing the noise. Then, they pushed open the door and stormed in, swiftly taking down all the armed men inside. But, upon seeing the situation inside the room clearly, everyone couldn't help but stare wide-eyed. 2 women in ragged clothes were imprisoned here, and Guerrero, looking at these two familiar faces, felt even more conflicted inside. It turned out, they were the two civilians who had told Guerrero about the mass grave years ago. Combo immediately checked on them, finding both were still conscious. Only then did everyone breathe a sigh of relief. Meanwhile, the others were conducting a search of the entire building. Indeed, they found a large stash of weapons and supplies here. At this moment, the atmosphere inside the house suddenly became tense. They understood clearly that what followed would surely be an even fiercer battle. Moreover, they now had to protect two unarmed civilians. But, as warriors, everyone had long accepted the possibility of death. So, without further words, with mutual understanding, they quickly replenished ammunition, preparing for the imminent fierce battle. Soon, night slowly fell. Everyone turned off the lights inside, led the two unarmed girls out the door, preparing to use the darkness to find a way to retreat. But, just as they stepped out, a bullet whizzed past, hitting the girl in the middle. Fortunately, she was already wearing a bulletproof vest, so she only fainted temporarily and her life wasn't in danger. But, this unexpected incident still caught the Special Forces team off guard. They could only resist while bringing the two girls back inside the building. During the retreat, Polo was hit by gunfire again. With teammates providing cover, he finally retreated safely back into the house. But, Damaso wouldn't let them off easily. Seeing Guerrero and his team retreat into the house, he immediately ordered an all-out assault, vowing to make these people pay for Tuco's death. The Special Forces team used the walls for cover, trying to resist, but the equipment disparity between the two sides was too great. Facing the enemy's storm-like assault, even though a teammate actively drew fire, everyone inevitably got injured, gradually starting to feel overwhelmed. But the enemy's fierce bombardment showed no signs of stopping. The Special Forces team could only hide inside the house, daring not to expose themselves. But, just as he was contemplating countermeasures, the gunfire outside suddenly fell silent. Guerrero and his teammates looked at each other, unsure what Damaso ultimately intended to do. At this moment, the girl hiding in the corner unexpectedly picked up a gun, preparing to fight the enemy alongside the Special Forces team. Guerrero didn't stop her. After all, right now, one more gun meant one more sliver of hope. On the other side, Damaso had also finalized his attack plan. He ordered Lucia to lead a team around to the back of the building, where a cargo pipeline connected directly to a nearby river, allowing them to cut off Guerrero and his team's retreat route from behind. Damaso himself would continue the assault from the front door. This way, with a pincer attack from front and rear, they could capture the Special Forces team. Hearing the gunfire resume, Guerrero felt uneasy. So he immediately ordered teammate Combo to treat the wounded first, while he himself held the front line against Damaso's attack. At this point, the situation was extremely disadvantageous for the team. Nearly half the members had lost their combat capability. With only the weapons they had, breaking through the encirclement was fundamentally impossible. Even more despairing, Damaso decided to order his men to set up an M2 machine gun and open fire. Bullets rained down like a torrential shower. Fortunately, everyone had already found cover. Thanks to their quick reactions, they avoided this deadly barrage. Then, taking advantage of the enemy reloading, Guerrero immediately ordered a counterattack. Relying on skillful marksmanship and excellent tactics, the team's counterattack was very effective. But, once Damaso reacted, the tide of battle inevitably shifted back towards the enemy. Another teammate was hit and fell. The situation for Guerrero and the others became extremely perilous. Worse still, an enemy took advantage of the chaos to rush inside the building. Fortunately, everyone reacted in time, coordinated, and quickly eliminated him. At this moment, the machine gun fire outside stopped again. Using the enemy's reloading window, Guerrero precisely sniped an armed man attempting to transport ammunition right in front of the main door. The Special Forces team could finally catch their breath temporarily. Knowing all his teammates were still alive, Guerrero's heart calmed. However, the danger was still far from resolved. Team member Tank was severely wounded and couldn't move. The rescued girl, Kara, proactively went to resupply him with weapons. At this time, Lucia had already led her forces into the pipeline and was feeling her way forward, moving through the dark basement, entering the building. This scene happened to be witnessed by the weakened Tank, then pulling the pin on a grenade and charging towards the basement door amidst enemy fire. Hearing the earth-shattering explosion, the teammates at the front rushed towards Tank's position, but ultimately only saw a sea of fire. Realizing their teammate had sacrificed himself, Guerrero and the others were filled with grief. However, they had no time for grief now. Regaining composure, Guerrero led the remaining survivors out of the building, preparing for a direct confrontation with Damaso Just as they stepped into the open ground in front of the main door, a bullet suddenly flew out, accurately hitting the youngest team member, Polo. Fresh blood poured uncontrollably from his mouth. This time, the young man who had always managed to escape death by a hair's breadth could finally no longer stand up. Guerrero was immediately overwhelmed by rage and grief. Just as he was about to kill Damaso to avenge his teammate, the enemy unexpectedly raised both hands in surrender, then discarded all his weapons. According to military regulations, Special Forces soldiers are forbidden from killing surrendered enemies. The 3 surviving members could only grip their weapons tightly, their eyes filled with unwillingness and indignation. How could they resign themselves to their teammate dying like this? At this moment, Guerrero suddenly threw down his gun and advanced, unarmed, rushing towards Damaso, preparing for a fair fight. But unexpectedly, the opponent was no pushover either. After being tackled to the ground and beaten by Guerrero, Damaso suddenly pulled out a dagger. This cunning criminal had no scruples whatsoever. The situation became one-sided. With years of military experience, Guerrero quickly gained victory thanks to his superb combat skills. Seeing Damaso lying limply on the ground like a pile of mud, Guerrero bent down, picked up the fallen dagger, then pressed the cold blade against the opponent's neck. He desperately wanted to kill Damaso to avenge his teammates, but as a soldier, he couldn't violate regulations. He could only use all his strength to knock the opponent unconscious. As the first streaks of dawn appeared on the horizon, the extraction helicopter finally descended slowly. Guerrero told Carla to notify the Department of Justice, then boarded the helicopter with his remaining teammates. The sunlight outside the window gradually became clear and bright, but on the faces of the 3 survivors, there wasn't a single smile. And the group photo taken at the base was the final moment of this 5-person Special Forces team. The film ends here. This is a representative work of recent Mexican action cinema. With its extremely sharp pacing and profound expression of the aesthetics of violence, it demonstrates a philosophical depth rarely seen in contemporary border-themed works. The film reaches a very high level in 3 aspects: action design, spatial metaphor, and analysis of human nature, deserving to be called a representative work of recent crime action films. If you like this video, don't forget to like and subscribe to catch more exciting commentary in future videos. See you in the next films.